It's Delaney here from the U.S. Food Insecure Twitter page. I'm here to discuss with you today the results of the survey I posted this week, which had to do with food insecurity in the United States. So, I would just like to talk about some of the results of the survey, give you guys a little bit more information or context to some of the questions of the survey, just so you guys have a little bit more information on food insecurity in the United States, since it is a pretty undercovered issue in the media. So, the first question that I posed on my survey was, what is the difference between food insecurity and hunger, and are they related? So I got a lot of different results. I got 17 responses on this question, and they all pretty much got the general gist, which is that food insecurity is not having enough access to food, while hunger is a psychological feeling that you have where you have a desire for food or a craving for food. So they are related because many people that are food insecure have hunger, and because they do desire food because they don't have enough access to it. They don't get it as often as they should. So many people did get this right. The one that I'd like to point out that I think explains it well is hunger is a physical signal to your brain that you need nutrients. Food insecurity is not knowing where your next meal will come from. They're related because many people who deal with daily food insecurity go hungry. That's a pretty accurate example of it. As one person mentioned, a mom could feed her kids but forgo eating herself, making her household have food insecurity but her suffering from hunger. Hunger is little to no food at all, and seems food insecurity is choosing who gets to eat that little amount of food. That's kind of true. If you don't have enough access to food for the whole family, then yes, you would be choosing who could eat. And a lot of the examples are of conditions or characteristics of food insecure households do stem from adults and people choosing who to eat. So that is relatively true as well. I'd like to move on to the next question, which has to do with the measure of food insecurity in households. This measure started in 2001 and since then has been put out annually. It's a questionnaire that measures this, and it's on the current population survey, which goes out annually in December. So I wanted to know, since the survey came out in 2001, when people thought that the highest percentage of United States households reported being food insecure. So the correct answer to this is 2008. In 2008 is when the recession hit, which goes to the next question, which what event marked the increase in households that were food insecure. So when the recession hit, a lot of people lost their jobs, and therefore they didn't know where their next meals were coming from because they didn't have a steady income. So about 60% of people were able to identify that 2008 was the correct answer. However, 5 people down at the bottom who answered what event marks the increase, they didn't know at all what event marked the increase, and only about 8 people knew that it was the recession out of the 18. So some people might have just generally guessed that it was 2008 and kind of got it correct, but the 8 down at the bottom would tell me that those 8 people definitely knew that 2008 had to do with the recession, which is the correct time when food insecurity was the highest. It was at 14.6% of households were food insecure in 2008, and the 3 years before that, the number was at 11%. So it jumped about 4% at the time of the recession. As for the 4 people that said 2015, I'm thinking they said that because of the time that I did put out this survey. If they didn't know a lot of information about food insecurity, they probably think that since I'm putting this out here now and they're seeing it now, then it must be that 2015, the most recent year, is when food insecurity was really high or something like that. But that's not the case, actually. This year, food insecurity rates for households dropped to 12.6%, down from 14% the past 6 years, or since 2008. So this is actually the first time there's been a substantial decrease in the number of food insecure households since 2008. But none of this is really well known, and it's still quite a high number from where we started with this annual survey. So this kind of goes with my next question that I asked: do you think food insecurity is a problem in the United States today? almost 3/4 of you guys said that yes, it is a problem in the United States today. And yes, it is still a problem because while it has decreased this year, or 2015's from 2015's annual tally, it's still not at the level that it was pre-recession. From 2005 to 2007, it was only 11% of households were food insecure. So we still have about 1.5% to get down to in order to be that pre-recession level, and in order to even make more changes from that pre-recession level, to try to decrease the number as much as possible. So there is a decent amount of people. There's 42 million people that are affected by food insecurity in the United States today, which is still a really large number, and 13 million children are included in that number. So this is still a problem in the United States today. I see 25% of you about didn't know enough information to answer this, and probably has to do to the fact that this issue is pretty undercovered. So the next question that I asked was, which state or region of the United States do you think is the most food insecure? And this pretty much would be best shown by this map right here. The dark purple is the states that are considered the most food insecure because they're above the United States average of, which is the 14 to 12% range. That was from 2013 to 2015. So pretty much you can see that the southern states are the most food insecure. On the survey, only about 3 people were able to correctly identify that. A lot of people just associated it with urban areas, which isn't necessarily true because there aren't a large number of urban areas in some of these states. There's more rural areas. So this is the correct region down here that is the most food insecure. And specifically Mississippi has 20% of households that are food insecure, which is the highest percentage of any state in the United States. And North Dakota has the lowest, actually, at 8.5%. So this all has to do with unemployment, which will take me in to my next question. So this region of the country tends to have the most, or the higher rate of unemployment, and therefore they are the most food insecure because if you don't have a steady job, then you don't know where your next meal is coming from, and you don't have access to enough food for your whole family. So only about 3 people got that right on my survey. Most people said poverty as the answer, which means pretty much that because they're poor, they would be food insecure. But actually, the poor part kind of comes from the unemployment part. So that's why unemployment tends to be the biggest predictor of food insecurity. If you don't have a job, you don't have income, then you tend to be considered more poor, and therefore, unemployment is the bigger part that can tell if a household's more likely to be food insecure. So, I asked about what characteristics of food insecure households are. I'm kind of going to skip over that question just because almost all of you guys were correctly to identify that all these are symptoms of food insecure households, like weight loss, skipping meals, you're worrying your food bot won't last. I think people can kind of get that one pretty simply based on these results. The next question that I asked was, how many households in the United States do you think are food insecure as of 2015? So the correct answer is 1 in 8. Households are food insecure as of 2015, which is about 12.6% of households. Half of you guys were able to get that right, so that's good. Again, I think that because the same percentage of people picked 1.6 here that picked 2015 as being the year where they thought the United States was the highest, had the highest number of food insecure households. I think those people, again, are going back to, oh, I must be putting it out there now, it must be the highest it's been, and 1.6 is the highest option on here, or 1 in 6 households is the highest option on here. So they must think, oh, in 2015, 1 in 6 was food insecure because it makes sense that it's the biggest issue now. So I think why those numbers are pretty much exact has to do with that as well. So my last couple questions, my last two questions, and then another one that just had to do with more audience. My last question had to do with if you've seen an article or read something about food insecurity in the last 6 months. So only one person had out of 21 people, which goes back to my point about this being a very undercovered issue. If only 1 in 21 people say this statistic carries over are seeing something about food insecurity, that is a very small portion of the population. And I think this kind of can be seen in the results that some people might know one thing, but they don't quite know the other. So some people knew, oh, it must be 2008, but they didn't necessarily know why. That was when food insecurity peaked. So I think that the media just doesn't cover it maybe in this area because it's not as prevalent in the Northeast, and a lot of these people that took this survey might be from the Northeast or something like that. They know my page or something like that. It also could have to do with the fact that food insecurity is not exactly a fun topic to talk about. You don't want to talk about how you don't have enough money for something, you can't afford what you need. So I think a lot of people don't want to write about it because it's not necessarily something a lot of people want to talk about, So the one person who did read something on it read it online, which seems to be the main source for information nowadays, which seems to be in correlation. So, and lastly, I asked if you consider your household to have been food insecure at any time during this year. I really wanted to know if anyone after this survey, or maybe even they knew before, could consider themselves food insecure, because you don't necessarily have to be food insecure all the time, but you could be food insecure in little patches. So I wanted to know if anyone considered that to be them, and only one person did. But I think it just shows also that 20% or 20 people out of 21 people that took this survey don't consider themselves to be food insecure, so they might not have as much information about the topic, or they might not know enough about it because it isn't as relevant to them, or they might not seek as much information about it. So I just want everyone to know more about food insecurity in the United States and realize it is still an issue. It's not something that just happens in third world countries. We do have some people that really don't know where their food are coming from. So if you have any questions, please tweet me at US Food Insecure, and I will try to find that information for you. And keep checking my Twitter page for some fun facts. Some of them will be from what I've talked about here, some of them will be new ones. So please follow me, and thank you for listening.